What's going on, guys? Austin Zabak here, and in today's video we're going to be talking about how to buy your first rental property with no money. Now, you might be sitting there and you've always wanted to buy a rental property. You've wanted to get into real estate and you've wanted the benefits that come along with it. But you don't have a lot of money and maybe you don't have good credit, but at the end of the day, you'll do whatever it takes to go ahead and get your first rental property. I highly encourage you to stay to the very end of the video because I'm actually standing in a rental property right now that I own, and I'm going to break down step by step how you can go buy a rental property right away with no money. I remember sitting in your shoes right now, watching other people on the platform of YouTube talking about, how to get into real estate, how to buy a rental property, and honestly, I had no idea where to begin. And now, several years later, I own multiple rental properties that produce cash flow on a monthly basis that literally cover all of my bills so I can live my life and do what I enjoy doing the most. So don't you worry, you don't have to be some guru, you don't need a ton of money, you don't need a lot of experience. I'm just gonna break it down in simple terms, step by step, how to go from where you're at right now to acquiring that very first rental property. And that first rental property is such a big milestone because if you don't own any rental properties, learning the fundamentals, the basics of buying a rental property, the thing is once you do it one time, you can do that same exact thing time and time again. So let's just go ahead and jump right into it. Without further ado, I would really appreciate it if you're new here, just to go ahead and smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm. It does help me out a ton, and let's go ahead and get into it. The first thing that you need to do right now, and I would do it right now, so if you need to, take just a quick moment and go get a pen and a paper and write down exactly why you want to get a rental property. Understanding the why, right? Why it is that you want to go ahead and buy real estate, right? Buy a rental property will be massive and it will be very crucial to you actually pulling it off. Now for me, I really wanted the passive income. Long term, I wanted to build wealth. And I also wanted the tax benefits that came along with owning real estate. What I really wanted more than anything was I wanted to buy real estate and I wanted other people to pay down my mortgage while I also cash flowed every single month. And eventually my goal was to pay all of my reoccurring bills on a monthly basis so that any money that I made, any money that I had to go out and exchange time for money, that was just icing on the cake for me. So that was my why, right? When I got into real estate, that's what I wanted more than anything. I wanted to not have to worry about my bills, to not have to worry about my car payment, my phone bill, my medical bills, and all of the bills associated with living life. I wanted my rental properties to take care of all of that for me. I didn't want to have to wake up every day stressed out and anxious, wondering how I was going to pay for my phone bill or my rent or my mortgage payment. Whatever it is, right? I wanted to know for certain that those things were 100% taken care of, again, by my tenant. So that was my goal, okay? I highly encourage you to figure out what your goal is. My goal is that I wanted to own multiple rental properties. How many rental properties do you want to own? If you could do whatever you wanted, and if literally it was not an issue to acquire multiple, how many would you acquire? Again, just take a moment and just write it down. Put it on a piece of paper. They say that when you write things down, it makes it that much more likely not only for it to happen, but you literally trick your brain into thinking that it is a reality. All right, the second thing that you want to do right away is you want to go ahead and you want to look at your credit score. Now, I know in the beginning of the video I said that you didn't have to have any money and you didn't have to have good credit, and that is true. So before you click off the video and say that I'm a liar, you can get into real estate and you can buy a rental property with no good credit and not a lot of money, okay? That is true. But I will tell you, having good credit will make your life a whole heck of a lot easier. So while you're watching the video, just go ahead and double check what is your credit score. In a perfect world, you want an above 700 credit score, okay? Anything above 700, typically, lenders will literally lend you money on a house without a shadow of a doubt, okay? So you want to go ahead and make sure that your credit score is above 700. Now, if your credit score is not above 700, don't worry, okay? Don't click off the video. If anything, take a quick moment and just smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm, okay? But no, in all reality, don't worry if you don't have a good credit score. You can fix it. It isn't the end of the world, and I'll give you a couple of practical steps to go ahead and do so. So obviously, first and foremost, and again, this isn't a credit video. I want to just kind of continue to move on, but first and foremost, if you have a lot of bad debt, then start to pay down that debt, right? If you have a lot of credit card utilization, go ahead and reduce your overall credit utilization. Get your utilization below that 20% mark, okay? I know a lot of people that have, 80% utilization, and that will really harm your credit score. So really focus on paying down a little bit of that debt, okay? Pay down your student loan debt, pay down your credit card debt, pay down a little bit of your auto loan debt, and ultimately you will start to literally watch your credit score go up every single month. Now again, as I said, if you don't have good credit, you can still buy a rental property, but what I would do before I move on, right, is work on your credit now, okay? Because then when you go to get to like the 5th or the 6th step that I'm gonna talk about in this video, hopefully by then your credit will actually be getting better already. That is why I wanted to make that point number 2. The third thing you need to do right now if you want to buy a rental property is go ahead and start looking for rental properties in a good location. Location is everything when you're buying a rental property because you're going to own it for a long period of time. And the last thing that you want to do is buy a rental property in an area that is going downhill, where people are leaving and they're not flocking to. So you really want to do your homework when looking for a rental property to make sure that it is in a good location, a location where people are moving to, a location that is coming up and trending, okay? A location where developers are developing, there's good school districts, low crime rates, and everything of the sort. You want a location where there's access to public transportation. It's close to good parks, good malls, good restaurants, shopping centers, maybe even a Starbucks. Those are all things, and again, just use a little bit of common sense, but those are all things that you want to look for when you're looking for a good rental property. And just think about it for a minute. Where would you want to live? I mean, you don't want to buy a rental property somewhere that you wouldn't even live yourself. So my biggest tip for you when I'm looking for a rental property, now I'm obviously standing at one of my rental properties right now, but I'm always looking for a rental property that I myself would go ahead and move into. Because I know for a fact that if I'll move into it, then I can guarantee that at any given time over the next decade, I can easily find a tenant that'll move into it. So that is crucial, right? While you're working on your credit, while you're figuring out your plan, you want to make sure you go ahead and start researching different areas and what the best area is, again, to buy a rental property. Now, if you live somewhere that isn't up and coming, people are moving out, right? And at the end of the day, you're like, Austin, I really don't think I live somewhere where, it's going to be a good area to buy a rental property. It isn't the end of the world, okay? It isn't the end of the world. You can definitely buy a rental property somewhere that you don't live. It'll definitely add a couple of challenges, but it is not impossible. So don't freak out if you live somewhere that is just not that great. Then at the end of the day, you want to start looking outside of where you live. Now, the next thing you want to do is you really want to go ahead and you want to calculate all of the numbers. You really want to look at the margins and you want to understand every single number that you're looking at frontwards to backwards before you go ahead and pull the trigger. Now, depending on what video you watch or depending on who you listen to, there's a lot of different numbers that you might want to take into consideration. But for the purpose of today's video, I'm going to keep it very simple, and I'm just going to break down the main numbers that you want to look at no matter what every single time you look at a deal. So one of the main things that you want to look at, and you've probably heard it before, whether it be in passing or maybe you've studied the topic a little bit, and that is your PITI, otherwise known as PITI. Now, PITI stands for principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. Those are the main things that you want to look at, right? Because that is going to be your main cost of actually buying the rental property. Now, I'm just going to assume that for the purpose of today's video, that you're buying a rental property that isn't beat up too bad. Now, if it is beat up a little bit and it's a little bit run down and you need to put work into it before you can actually move a tenant into it, then you want to calculate all of those costs as well. But I'm not going to talk about that too much in today's video, as I've made a lot of other videos on my channel talking about, how to calculate repair costs on a property. So for the purpose of today's video, PITI is really what you want to focus on, and those are going to be your main expenses. So what you really want to do is you want to look at the total of those four numbers, and you want to make sure that no matter what, that number is less than what you're going to be able to rent the property out for. So just to give you a really simple example, let's just take a property where you have about $1,000, okay, $1,000, and that's kind of made up of your principal, again, your interest, your insurance, and your taxes. Now, the majority of that will be principal and interest. Your taxes and insurance typically aren't going to be too bad, and you can definitely look into that on a case-by-case basis. The only other things that you really want to look at after you look at all of that are you want to make sure that there's not a big HOA. You definitely want to factor in the HOA. And a couple of other ones that you could probably factor in is vacancy rate, also maintenance costs, and management costs. Now you can go ahead and Google, how to calculate your vacancy rate. But basically a vacancy rate is just saying that, your property's not going to be rented out 100% of the time, right? It's basically saying that over the course of the next 5 or 10 or 20 years, right, you have a 30-year fixed mortgage on the property, that over that course of time, people are going to move in and people are going to move out. So you're actually going ahead and you're calculating the vacancy rate over the long haul, and you're factoring that in as a monthly reoccurring expense, because what you're going to do is you're just going to average it out over the long term. Then, of course, you have maintenance costs. Okay, that's pretty much just, again, and everybody's talking about it, right? Everybody's like, when the toilet breaks, when the fan breaks, look, you've heard it a million times. If you've ever thought about buying a rental property, people are literally talking about tenants and toilets, okay? I've heard it literally more times than I can count. But it's really not that big of a deal, okay? So just remember, you want to calculate it into your total cost, and then also, if you're paying a property manager to go ahead and manage the property for you, then you're going to want to calculate that into the cost as well. So again, you want to make sure that your total rent, right, the total gross amount of money that you're going to be receiving every single month is greater than all of the numbers that we just talked about. So if your PITI is $1,000 and maybe your vacancy rate, and after you average it out and you kind of take a random number that you're essentially going to factor in on a monthly basis, let's just say it's like $50 to $100, and then let's just say your maintenance costs are $50 to $100, and let's just say your management's $50 to $100, okay? Just for very simple purposes and just to kind of talk about it in the video. So let's just say again, for very simple purposes, we're looking at like $1,300 a month of total expenses. There's no HOA or anything like that. Again, for the purpose of the example, I'm going to keep it very simple. And let's just say that my total gross income, my gross rental rates in that area, which again, there's a lot of different places that you can calculate that, or let's just say $1,500 a month. That would mean that in that scenario, I have about $200 in additional leftover cash flow, otherwise known as like cash on cash return. There's a lot of different phrases that people use, but that is your actual cash flow that you're going to be making on top of actually making all of your payments. And you always want to make sure that on any rental property that you're cash flow positive, okay? And you'll hear that a lot in real estate, but basically it just means that at the end of the day, you're actually profitable after everything is all said and done. So really understanding the numbers of the rental property that you're buying, understanding, that it is in the right location, really understanding your why, and understanding, kind of just everything when it comes down to actually buying the property before you buy it will really enable you to make a good decision when you're going out to buy your first rental property. Because I see so many people that, they run the numbers really quick, or, they're looking for way too much cash flow, so they buy it in a bad area. Or, there's all of these different things and mistakes that people make when they're going to buy a rental property that I just encourage you to watch this video as many times as you can possibly watch it. Of course, while you're watching it, just obviously smash the like button, okay? But at the end of the day, that way you can go out and you can actually buy a rental property and know for certain that it is a good investment. One of the next things I encourage every single person to do, and I've seen a lot of people make the mistake of not doing this, but really get your inspections done on the property. So once you find the property, right, you've determined the best location, you figured out, what parts of town are really good, they're up and coming, and overall you found the property that you want to purchase, right? You've run all the potential numbers, but before you actually go ahead and wire the money to the escrow account, before you go ahead and purchase the actual property, I would recommend that you really do your homework on the inspections. So what I would really do is I would hire a very good inspector. Okay, now there's a lot of, you just Google it, there's a lot of inspectors that'll pop up in your area, and for a couple of $100, you can hire an inspector to make sure that the plumbing's good, the foundation, the roof, right? The electrical, all of the main components of a house, right? Of real estate. You want to have a licensed and bonded inspector go ahead and look at everything before you buy the house, okay? You want to make sure there's no mold. You want to make sure there's no termites. You want to make for certain that the roof isn't bad, that the air conditioner, the heater. There are so many unforeseeables in the real estate industry, and I see so many people that they look at the house and they're like, yep, it looks great. And in reality, they get in there and they start taking things apart and ripping things out. And the next thing they know, it is a disaster when they start opening the walls up. So make for sure, okay, that you do your inspection. Now, typically, depending on where you live, you will have what they call either a due diligence period or an inspection period. And this is where essentially when you go to buy a property, essentially put the property under contract, you're gonna go ahead and do what they call earnest money, right? You're gonna take earnest money, which is like a deposit, and you're gonna put that down on the property. Again, depending on where you live and depending on who wrote your contract and a bunch of other variables, you'll have what they call, again, a due diligence or an inspection period. And typically, I would say the average standard in the industry is about 10 days. Now, during those 10 days, for the most part, okay, again, consult with an attorney, consult with your real estate professional, but for the most part, during those 5-10 days, whatever it is, your earnest money is fully refundable. Meaning, if you go hire an inspector and you get in there, and they're like, you know what, Austin, your roof is just trash. Your foundation is, it's like there's a huge crack in it. Your air conditioner's shot. Whatever the case is, if you decide, right, if it totally messes up all of your numbers and all of a sudden you don't have the margin anymore, right? Your numbers don't make sense because now you've got to take a big lump sum of cash before you even move a tenant in there to do all of the repair costs. And if it doesn't make sense anymore, you can back out of the deal and you can keep your earnest money, okay? You don't lose your earnest money, meaning there's basically no risk of actually getting a property under contract as long as you cancel during your inspection or your due diligence period if that is what you decide to do. So I would just encourage you to make sure that you talk to your real estate agent or that you do whatever you have to do to understand, exactly what it is that you need to do during your due diligence, right? During your inspection period, so you don't get screwed in real estate investing, right? Real estate is an industry where if you just do your homework up front, right? You look at everything, you run your numbers, you determine the right location, you write down your why, you do all of these different things, then you can be successful. In all honesty, it's a pretty secure industry, right? Obviously, the market is always going to go up and down, kind of like a roller coaster. But over the long haul, right, historically, the real estate market is always going to go up, right? You're going to make your money through appreciation. You're going to make your money through the actual mortgage paydown by your tenant. You're going to make money a lot of different ways when you go to actually buy a rental property. But again, you want to do your homework on the front end, right? You don't want to learn the hard way. So I just encourage you to take a bunch of time in the beginning to really understand, what it is that you're looking for in a rental property, right? What is your goal? What's a good location? Have you done your inspections on the property? Have you read the contract inside and out? Have you really analyzed the deal, right? Have you really looked at it? Have you looked at rental rates in that particular area, right? Have you done everything you can possibly do to make sure, right, that you're making a good investment? Look, in America, we are rewarded, right? Capitalism kind of 101 is that we're rewarded when we go buy assets, right? And so you want to make sure that you're doing it right because, the system kind of actually is in your favor, believe it or not, okay? The system, right, the government, they want you to buy assets. They actually want you to make money, okay? That is how it works in America, right? So we're very lucky in America. You just want to make sure that you take the precautionary steps to do whatever you can to make for certain, again, that you're making a good investment. Now, there are obviously a couple of other random little nuances that you're gonna probably need to know when going and buying a rental property, but I wanted to make a video kind of just breaking down the bigger things, right? I'm really talking about, a lot of the big items that, you're gonna need to know, especially as a beginner. So if you liked the video and you want more on this particular subject and you're still watching, I would really appreciate it, okay? If you would just go ahead and drop a comment letting me know what it is that you want me to talk about. And maybe I'll make a part 2 to this video kind of being part 1, and then I'll do part 2, okay? So if you enjoyed it, definitely let me know down below. Also, if you wouldn't mind, take just a quick minute and smash the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I would really appreciate it. Also, if you haven't already, definitely go check out my podcast. It's called The A&A Show, and we interview cool people all around the world. Me and my business partner, we talk about life, we talk about business, we talk about money, we talk about real estate, obviously. So definitely, go consider subscribing over there, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video.